I don't want to bring too much of an air of formality to this town hall meeting. However, we are recording. So for the sake of those who told me they couldn't be here tonight and wanted to be able to hear what we talked about, my name is Ellen Birrell. I represent District 4 of Cottonwood Heights. And this is a town hall meeting that I'm hosting. We can talk about subjects within our district or anything you'd like to talk about that pertains to Cottonwood Heights City. And for the sake of the 2 quick hours that'll go by, I want this again to be informal and have everyone feel that they can insert their questions. Some people have come here with comments that they want everyone to hear. And so I will be needing to, again, monitor the timing because there's at least a dozen subjects that could come up tonight. And so we can get a little bit in depth on some of the subjects, but we may have to carry, no subject more than about 15 minutes or we'll really have trouble getting to everything that people are interested in hearing about. So I may look a little bit awkward, hopefully. It will look better as time goes on, but this is how I'd like to do it. Again, for the sake of the recording, it's not so much that we couldn't project our voices and be heard, but for the sake of those that wanted to get in on this, we have another microphone and a recorder right here. So I'm just going to ask that if you have a question, if you'll just get up from your seat and come over, and that'll let me know that you want to say something, and then as soon as I can, I'll give you the time. I think that'll be far better than me rephrasing every question you ask. So is everybody okay with that format for tonight? Wonderful. Well, I want to tell you that after my first year in office, I'm really energized. I'm really thrilled to be able to represent all of you in our city government. We have a great city, so much potential in so many ways, and I have, we're talking to this. I've lived here for 34 years, and I've lived over by Bywater Park. I've walked and ridden my bicycle on not every road. I certainly found out campaigning a year and a half ago, that I hadn't walked every single street. So it's, I suggest one day you run for office if you want to really get to know your community in a way even more deeply than you thought you already did. And I see that we also have our Councilman Bracken in the room. I'm so delighted that he's here, and I hope that you'll chime in if you have any observations. Okay. I think you all know that largely one of the reasons I ran for office was my concern over Wasatch Boulevard and the general fast, loud, noisy, dangerous roadways that have become kind of the norm in most cities and counties throughout the U.S. So I'm certainly not picking on Cottonwood Heights or Salt Lake Valley, but as I have poured myself over the last 3 years into researching and understanding what is happening with our, in many ways, wonderful modernity, we also have to be careful that our car-centric ways don't keep us from our good health, clean air to breathe, and the general safety. And the safety on our roadways comes from slower speeds. So we know that historically, when Brigham Young came here, he built really wide roads, which for the time really helped wagon trains make a U-turn and things like that. But what we now find is that too much wide asphalt signals in the mind of the driver that they can drive very fast. And it's at speeds over 35 miles an hour that people die. And so one of the achievements that we made in this past year within our city code is that no new roadway will be built and designed at a speed of higher than 35 miles an hour. As we all know, we drive Highland Drive, Fort Union, Wasatch Boulevard at much higher speeds than that. But going forward, we want to really put the safety of our residents even more paramount than ever. And And so you're going to see some really exciting things with land use. Our council is working vigorously to create on Fort Union Boulevard kind of a Main Street feeling. We're very excited that if you've ever studied the overlay plan for Fort Union Boulevard, it starts on the westerly edge of Cottonwood Heights with our more big box stores and a little bit more of a commercial feeling. But as you come eastward on Fort Union Boulevard to about Mountain View Park, you start, you obviously notice you've got residential, you have parks and small offices. And so the long-term plan is to make that section, in essence, from roughly Montview Park all the way over to the steep Butler Hill, so that's about 2700 east, to create a Main Street feeling. And I'm not going to, make a lot of promises, but we have a marvelous Fort Union Boulevard master plan from 2017 that shares a vision for a walkable mixed-use feeling where it really welcomes you to get out of your car and to stroll along and patronize the local businesses we have here in Cottonwood Heights. So let me just perhaps start our evening. You may be curious. You've heard that the City Council last year put in motion the effort to purchase the 10 acres of the current Hillside Plaza. That excludes the Walgreens, which is its own separate entity on the corner. And in approximately the next 6 to 8 weeks, we should know whether we are going to absolutely pull the trigger on obtaining that 10 acres. And this we're doing so that we can see this anchor, this Main Street feeling with mixed-use development that's very much based on human scale. So the prior developers who came in and bid and put forward their suggestions of what they wanted to develop in that 10 acres was like 350 units of condos and apartments. It would have appeared somewhat like a fortress of 3 to 4 story walls, and all 5 of us that represent you in the city, the mayor and the 4 council members, all agreed that that is not the anchor we want to get this Main Street feeling. And so if you've wondered why we plan to bond to the tune of $14 million to purchase that land and then work with with a number of resources to come up with the best plan, and everyone in this room, everyone in our city, is part of the resource of understanding what it is you want in that 10 acres. We know we need some housing. We know we would like to have a public use, and exactly what that can look like. Can it be an amphitheater? Can it include some facilities that meet the needs of youth and seniors? And there's a myriad. I personally would like to see some childcare and I'd like to see either underground parking, but certainly the parking behind, instead of what we currently have on Fort Union Boulevard, which you're all nodding your heads. We have strip malls, right? So you drive along and see one parking lot after another. And eventually, the eventuality is to reduce the parking stalls, especially in parking areas that are unused, that historically sit vacant, and bring vitality and out to the sidewalks, and again, I get really excited about this because I think it's something that will it would be good for our local businesses. It's been proven in other cities of our I should say areas like Indianapolis and other, that their population is similar to Salt Lake County. As they've modified and made their communities more walkable, the local businesses' revenues have surged, and it's been a real positive for the residents and both the businesses. Does anybody have any particular questions about the Hillside Plaza project? And actually, if your question is only 2 or 3, very short, I can rephrase it into the microphone. Otherwise, you're welcome. Andy, did you? Well, we're still in our due diligence phase, and as we've watched that mall lose one tenant after another, we're really crossing our T's and dotting our I's to make sure exactly what we would be purchasing, and to make sure that we can transform that from the current ocean of asphalt into something so completely different. And so we're having to check on all the existing leases and work through the formalities. But we haven't come upon any, in my view, insurmountable problems like with, problems with the land itself. I don't know if does that answer? Yes, sir.
What about developing that into a park?
Well, we would like to have some park elements within that space, but we also have to have tax revenue generated. That is a challenge we have in the city. If we outlay $14 million, for our little city, I mean, we only bring in just over $27 million a year. So we do have to come up with strategies that allow us, hopefully, to sell back some of the land to a developer, but we want to see that the developer puts in the kind of housing that tiers back away. Again, this is Ellen Birrell speaking, but I hope I'm representing many of the people on the council. Right, and that has come out in our surveys. I want to really thank you for making the comment that our citizens do want to see more open space, more green space, and we need to protect, what we have and do all we can. And the reality is, as we urbanize and we also make our city so that we have affordable housing, so that we don't gentrify to the point that only those of us that already own houses and are, can live here. I think we also find in the surveys that people are concerned about young people, elderly people who want to still live in the city but can no longer maintain a large home. So we welcome ongoing public engagement as we come up with design elements. But turning it into all 10 acres into a green space, I can say with almost certainty is probably not on the table. Is that the answer? Yes, sir. Yeah, please do.
I just wanted to say that I appreciate the council's decision to purchase that, and because for a lot of us that was evidence that we were being listened to, so we appreciate that and appreciate your efforts to purchase that and turn it into something other than just a stack of apartments.
Thank you. You might want to lift this up and just bring it to your mouth, otherwise it doesn't really record. All right, well, if we've covered that well enough. Yes, please do, Audrey. Can you speak into that, Mike?
I live by Dover Hill, which they just went through they're in the middle of going through their thing. And I've sat in on many, many meetings for the Planning Commission. And what their plan is their plan is to do, I get really uncomfortable with so much microphone, you guys. I'm sorry, I'm not really a big public speaker. What their plan is to do high density to give us green space. And it seems, I know this is America, we're not supposed to say this kind of stuff, but I have a lot of friends that live up around in my area, and a lot of them, it's their second home. They live in New York, they live in LA, and I happen to be someone that moved from California, I'm sorry. But
don't be sorry, I'm a Californian too.
But it just seems like, wouldn't it be nice if we could say only, you got to get rid of the second homes before you stuff us into living on top of each other for a 1 acre park. I mean, they right now have made this big thing about the poor guy came in to say he built a shed too close to his neighbors. Well, they made this poor guy, and he obviously didn't have a lot of money, he had to tear down his shed, even though everybody in the city has sheds too close to their neighbors. But in our neighborhood, they're breaking the regulations, and it's called setbacks, where they build the houses too close together. That's okay, because the Planning Commission decided it's okay, because we get high-density housing to have our little 2 acre park, which I love the park, I'm so glad to have it, but we're losing a 6 acre park to get it. And it just seems a little, I don't know, like I'm watching, I don't know if any of you guys have driven up to where they're developing. I grew up here, so I know all the developing that's going on with these huge monstrosity homes. While the rest of us, they want us to live in high-density housing. While everybody else, these, God knows what, people are building huge, huge second homes. And it just seems a little off to me of what is going on here. So I just wanted to make a comment about the development of what we're talking about.
Well, I'm glad Audrey brought...
And I really don't feel listened to by the city at all. I mean, a little bit, but...
Well, I'm really glad Audrey brought this up about, she lives by Dover Hills, so that's where the LDS Ward House burnt. It's north of Smith's. If anybody doesn't know what we're talking about, just raise your hand. And the LDS Church decided to sell the acreage around the LDS Church, which, how many years, 40, 50 years ago, they promised that it would always remain a park for the community. And so one of the suggestions that I'm exploring, and I hope we can continue to explore, is the idea of what's called form-based code. And why I'm interested in this would be that we could go almost neighborhood by neighborhood to some degree and say, what is it you want to see in your neighborhood? Like right now, we have the same building code throughout the city for the residential, for R1, in terms of the building height at 35 foot at the top of a roof and things like this. If we are going to respond to what residents are telling us in the surveys of the last 18 months, the number one thing that residents indicated they wanted was to preserve their view. And I have not delved into this as thoroughly as can be, but I know I was in a session when our ex-mayor, Kelvin Colomar, did say that if the city were to decide that certain views must be protected, that is something that could be codified here in our city. Now, that is something I'm not saying is, I haven't researched that, but to Audrey Pine's remark, let's go back to that overlay that we talked about for Fort Union Boulevard. You may be aware that the state legislature has mandated that the municipalities of Utah, and particularly it's happening here in Salt Lake Valley, anywhere where there is a light rail transit station, I believe it's within a 1 mile radius around that station, has to have transit-oriented development, which is high density. That makes sense to me. There's a lot of people that not only can't afford housing, they can't afford their mobility. Did you know that the average cost of owning a private vehicle today, the average cost is $10,000? So for every adult per year, $10,000 per year, thank you. And so it's really not sustainable for many households to have every adult in their household own and operate a car and then try to meet their rent or mortgage payments. So I very much favor seeing the higher density affordable housing be on transit lines. Now, clearly, Dover Hills isn't anywhere near transit. In my opinion, you should not be subjected to higher density. Now, the density going in the Ivory Homes project there isn't the kind of density that I'm thinking about with, multi-stories and, really quite smaller apartments and condos. I mean, these are houses. Is that correct? But nonetheless, there's a lot of possibilities that our city can explore, and it takes time and it takes political will. So, there's nothing that I can see that can be done to change the direction going on in Dover Hills Park. But I think it points up that sometimes we take for granted that things will always remain the same. I've had people, I live on the east side of Wasatch Boulevard in the top of the world area. And I've had people say, well, you knew when you bought that house that that's a state route right there down from your street, so it's your problem. If you don't like the noise of a highway, you knew they were going to build it out into a big highway one day. Why'd you buy that house? Just sell your house and move away. Well, I can tell you, I've lived there 22 years. I've sunk many tens of thousands of dollars into making that house, the wood floors, the thing I always wanted, you know? So I really am sympathetic to residents who say, I want to preserve the quality. That's why I moved here from the East Coast, the West Coast, or I've lived here all my life, I don't want to leave. So, you know, there's a lot of good existing policies and codes that we have in Cottonwood Heights, but if we want to truly put the view shed as a top priority, we have to look at that, because it's not in any way a part of our codes to protect people's view sheds. So we're not going to solve that tonight, but I appreciate that you came to the microphone with that concern, because I think, again, it's come out in the surveys that, you know, you moved here for a distinct reason, and it wasn't to be abutted by a lot of high-density housing right next to you, or to have it rob you of your view.
It all depends on what you want. I've lived in high-density areas where I'm right, well, because I want to walk to the store and walk to the restaurants, and in this particular area, we don't. I mean, there's, not us, but people have tennis courts, and they, you know, they have big families there, and they want their yards. My brother's a developer. He says, oh, nobody wants yards anymore. I think that's great for the people that don't. But come in and tell a neighborhood that our philosophy now is high density, so we're going to...
Well, that's why, again, within our plans, we can say as a city, we want to see the higher density along transit lines. Right now, that would be Highland Drive and Fort Union. We don't even have year-round transit on Wasatch Boulevard. I think we all know that. In fact, they took it away for ski season. So, you know, it's there's a lot of things to work on, and I want you to know, I need to say a couple other things. Anybody that just entered the room after 6 o'clock, I'm asking that if you have a comment, it's not that I want you to have to be subjected to amplified microphone, but we are recording this session based on a request from various constituents. So if you do have questions that have any length to them, please come to this microphone and speak into the microphone, so that for the benefit of the other constituents who couldn't be here tonight. So again, you know, this isn't something we're going to solve tonight, but this is important that it comes out. What is important to you? Larry, do you mind speaking into the microphone? Or do you want
a question? What's the current status between Cottonwood Heights, Ivory Homes, and, you know, where's that at right now in negotiations to sell that property?
Are you talking about there at Dover Hills?
Yeah. Where the
Yeah, right. So Ivory Homes has been given their permit to advance their housing complex, and it's 13 houses? So it's
They still have to do one more, maybe 12.
So 12 to 13 houses. So they also, based on the trenching they did, because this is a sensitive lands area, found that the central part of, I would call it the northwest portion of that entire lot has seismic concerns. So that's why the park is going to be located over that, because we don't build housing over, you know, active seismic areas that have a history of active seismic. So the houses are again being located for the Ivory Homes project, and they're moving ahead. So the city is moving ahead to secure 2 acres out of the 7 acres for a park. Okay. Oh, yeah, please go ahead.
So I just have a question. If you're about transit and what the plans are to increase that, because if you're talking about decreasing the speed limit and mobility on Fort Union and reducing parking, how are people going to get around and get to those businesses? And where are the cars that are normally going on Fort Union as part of a thoroughfare, where are they going to go? They're going to disperse out into other smaller neighborhoods and smaller streets. What's the plan to increase that? Because right now there's one transit line down Fort Union, and it's only every half an hour, and not even on the weekends. It's 1 hour. So what are you going to do?
Thank you for that excellent question. So well spoken. Thank you. So the studies have not even been ordered. We as a council have not agreed that that is a definitive direction that's going to be taken. I will say that based on the research that I've done and the sources that I've conferred with, vehicles that want to travel with any speed and get from point A to point B, say from Midvale to the mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon, they need to take I-215. As we know, our beltway parallels Fort Union Boulevard to the north, and traffic patterns change as people have to change. And that's what we're seeing in our Salt Lake City proper. They're making a lot of changes which bring safe mobility to all users. And so there would be studies made to thoughtfully take into consideration the needs of the parking needs of cars, as well as, the actual driving of cars. Right now, and actually I think we have our Councilman Bracken to thank for the synchronized lights along Fort Union Boulevard. That was a very positive development for motorists. Yes, it was very positive. And so he also largely drove the wonderful new roundabout that you probably went through today to get over here. So I want to acknowledge the efforts that the council has made since the incorporation in 2005 to keep us moving. And the thing now that I'm seeing here with our urbanization throughout the valley, with all the people that want to recreate in our canyons, and that really was take it to the next level with COVID, right? People wanted to recreate in their own backyard instead of getting on airplanes. So this will not just, fall out of the sky half-baked. We need to thoroughly consider all the different users on these roads, and the good news is that we're able to see the traffic patterns through all the, Google has their eye on everything we do these days, right? So we can tell where cars are going, and from what I can see out into the future, we would be encouraging those who could get on either the Beltway or use some other way to get where they're going. They would say, Fort Union is now too slow for me. I normally go zipping along there, but now, I'll either get on again, the Beltway or, I'll.
200 south.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there are, but the idea is that we do improve our transit. Just since I've lived in Cottonwood Heights, I've seen our bus service decline. Not just ski bus service, but the route that used to come all the way down to Golden Hills Avenue before it turned around and went north up to the university. They took that out. I mean, no longer can you ride a bus to get to the Cottonwood Heights Rec Center. So in our general plan, because one of the things you may be aware of is that we have a general plan update in progress. And that will look at the whole city and where we want to see it go. We also have a 5-year transportation plan that's in the works. We have a sustainability plan that's being updated. We have a sensitive lands ordinance that's being updated. So I don't know, I can't imagine that Cottonwood Heights has ever had so much on its plate at one time to really thoroughly consider and prioritize, what we want to see in our city. So I don't have all the answers, but there was just an article in the newspaper today, and Representative Spendlove is putting together a bill that would allow for a lower ratio of parking stalls to both commercial or housing units, because we are recognizing again that for a lot of households, they simply can't afford to meet their rent or mortgage and their mobility costs, and more, and the younger generations are wanting transportation alternatives. In fact, transportation alternatives came up in the top 4 things in our survey that residents want. And I just want to be clear. I think people that want active transportation and want alternatives are not trying to tell anybody they can't drive their car. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to give alternatives for those who do want to walk or ride. Because statistically, 40% of the trips that are made in a private vehicle are to go less than 5 miles. So if you really put that in your head and think about that, their trips to the grocery store, and we're right now putting together a new survey that's going to be very housing oriented. And if you're one of the registered voters that's chosen by Y2 Analytics to be part of this survey, you'll be asked, do you want to see little pockets of, they're calling it small commercial, but it's not a strip mall. When they say small commercial, they're really talking about, we could zone this as like, it could be a little cafe and a little small grocery. Because how often do you maybe just want to meet a friend and you'd love to be able to, within a 10-minute walk of your house, go to a little cafe or pick up bread or milk or eggs. So it's not, to Audrey Pine's point about her concerns with wanting to feel like she's in a very residential open area. Now, she could walk within 10 minutes to the Smith's grocery store strip mall. So she already has that. But for many of us, I can say that if I walk really vigorously, I could get to a cafe in 25 minutes. So the idea is, let's talk about this neighborhood by neighborhood and find out what the majority in each of these, what do they want out in Giverny? I mean, talk about the Green Hills neighborhood in Giverny stuck way out in that south end. The children that live there are trapped. They can't get to a park. They can't get to a green space. I mean, we need to really, if we want these 10-minute walking sheds, I think it's a brilliant idea. It's an up-and-coming thing that we're seeing. So we have the opportunity for these things, and I'm here to be a voice for that. Please, go ahead with your question. If you could pick this up and talk into it, otherwise it won't record it.
Okay, my name is Brian Schutz. I live right down the hill here. Excuse me. It's more of a comment than a question. I've been working with Randy Whitehead and his group trying to help influence the decisions that the council have made that we sincerely appreciate. I came from it from a slightly different point of view than others. First thing I noticed was when they reworked the intersection down here where Dan's is, and now that if you want to follow the law, you can't get out of Dan's except by going a direction you don't want to go, and then first opportunity, hang a U-turn, which is not exactly the safest plan. I appreciate Dan's and American Foods, who are the owners, for being a part of our community. I think in a way they were kind of betrayed by that move, which I think was done by UDOT, but maybe I'm giving you guys too much credit. Anyway, but I think a good solution for this is several steps, and I've made this suggestion previously. We redevelop Hillside Plaza as a location for Dan's, plus the current lessors or occupants in there, the commercials, could be, if we could divide that section into two pieces, one on the east and one to the west, rebuild the one side, locate everybody to the other side, and then once the new side is completed, move them back over as they're interested, move back over to the new side, and then finish developing the other side. With a Dan's right in the middle, perhaps with underground parking, whatever. But this gives us, it serves a purpose of getting Dan's, keeping Dan's in the neighborhood, improving access. It is, I have to admit, I go the wrong, I go out over all those painted yellow lines, because that's how I get back to my house. And traffic gets heavy. It can be spooky in there. I don't know if there's any record of how many accidents are occurring in that location. But having moved Dan's there, and perhaps working in conjunction with American Foods, redevelop the current Dan's location for a multi-story, high-end, multiple
Multifamily.
Yeah, multifamily unit. If you can imagine, the west side would be a lower value side because you've got the intersection and all the lights and everything. But the east side, you would have multi-million-dollar view of the mountains. And that side could be leased or rented or whatever for premium. And I've heard that in the past, there's been an interest in getting a top-class steakhouse here, maybe a Ruth's Chris, maybe up on the roof.
Mm-hmm.
So we go 5 stories up with a couple of stories of parking underneath. And I don't know who owns it, whether it's going to be American Foods that or if we, be partners with them or what. But there's an opportunity there for quite a number of units, half of which would be really prime real estate. And because of the location down adjacent to the freeway, nobody has a view shed down there. So nobody down there at the McDonald's or the bank or whatever, nobody down there is going to say, hey, wait, I can't see the valley anymore. They can't see it now, unless they have a multi-story building or something, but I can't think of any.
Well, Mr. Shute, I thank you for bringing up that idea. I've heard it before, and it's a fascinating suggestion. And so, as we move ahead, we can see whether there's any political appetite on the city council for your idea. I think it's very innovative. In fact, I think I maybe saw our representative from your district has entered the room. You might want to talk with Mr. Newell afterwards and see what he thinks about that idea, since he represents you. So I'm gonna move on. I appreciate that. That's a fascinating idea that you brought forward, and it does tick a lot of boxes. So again, we're all used to the large grocery store idea, but I also think it's fascinating to explore the possibility of smaller, more numerous little grocers where you can again walk within your community and pick up your milk, eggs, and bread, and maybe a little bakery or cafe idea. So that's something I hope I can advance within the general plan, and all of you coming forward and making your suggestions to the council will certainly help to sway what's being discussed in our work sessions. Go ahead, Mr. Velasquez.
My name is Jade Velasquez. I'm a constituent in your area, and maybe switching gears for a second, a concern to me is the technological innovation within Cottonwood Heights, and I'm curious about the action that the council is taking in exploring other options outside the monopoly of Comcast.
Great. Well, your question is perfectly timed. I wish I had planted somebody in the room. I actually got that same question from another constituent this afternoon. So for almost a year now, the council has been talking about high fiber lines coming into the neighborhoods throughout Cottonwood Heights, and this is something we've been studying. The city manager and his staff have been actively negotiating with Google. I think it's okay for me to say that. And it's scheduled for our work session in, I believe, 3 weeks from now, the 2nd. So please mark your calendar. The 1st and 3rd Tuesday of every month, beginning at 4 p.m., is a work session that's held in a room just behind here, and then the business sessions are held here at 7 p.m. And again, I know that's on the agenda for the staff to present what they've been able to negotiate with Google Fiber, because we've seen it go in with our neighbors in Sandy, and I've been following in next door the comments. And so far, the residents that are paying for that Google Fiber that's been laid in Sandy seem to be pleased with it. So I personally have CenturyLink in my house, and it's half the cost of what Google will be. So I don't know if I'm going to sign up for it, but then there are people that really want the higher speed and dependability of a fiber line coming right into their house. So I believe it's the 3rd Tuesday of February, whatever that date is. I don't have that right in front of me. Is it the 16th or 17th? Yeah, I think the 7th is the Tuesday, the first Tuesday. So if we do the math on it, maybe it's more like the 21st. Okay, great. Well, super. If no one else has another comment at this point, let's give an update on the FEIS, so UDOT's environmental impact statement and their ongoing preference for building a gondola up Little Cottonwood Canyon with a 2,500 parking stall garage in the southeast edge of Cottonwood Heights. So instead of what we were promised 3 years ago, which would be an intermodal hub at the mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon, utilizing some of the gravel pit space, UDOT is now pressing to build. If you've ever parked in the Salt Lake International Airport parking garage, that's what they're going to build in our residential foothill area near the 0.7 miles from the mouth of the Little Cottonwood Canyon. And then there'll be 22 commercial towers, many of them as high as 260 feet into the air. I'm needless as well. Cottonwood Heights as a city passed a resolution in December denouncing the gondola and all of its associated widening of Wasatch Boulevard. Right now, UDOT has a preference for a 5-lane highway from the mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon up to their gondola base. They indicate that it is to accommodate projected southbound commuter traffic, but it's only, by their own data, it is only necessary possibly in 2050, and yet, according to the Wasatch Front Regional Council, it has been put into the draft regional transportation plan of the Wasatch Front Regional Council to be built between now and 2030, again, to accommodate traffic that might come in 2050. And in the studies that I've been part of, what it really is to accommodate is these large, the large traffic that'll need to get to the 2,500 parking lot garage located in a residential area. Yes, Randy Whitehead. Randy just asked, who can we speak to? What can we do? There were about 120 of us at the Wasatch Front Regional Council offices on the north side of the Gateway Mall just this past Thursday. We were each supposed to be able to make a 5-minute comment, and we suddenly, it was announced you could make a 1-minute comment, and they took 30 minutes worth of comment, so a fraction of the people that were there. Mayor Silvestrini, who is the outgoing chair of the Wasatch Front Regional Council, said to the crowd gathered there, "We already know what you're going to say, so please be quick." And I mean, I hate to quote that, but it was very disturbing to me. It kind of illegitimized for me the Wasatch Front Regional Council's intent with their 2050 regional transportation plan. So I don't have all the answers. We're hoping that when the record of decision is made for the EIS process, which we anticipate in the next 1 to 3 months, that the lawsuits will begin to fly against UDOT in the way, the process in which they've conducted this EIS. It did not take into consideration regional traffic pressures. It's strictly, the scope of that EIS was strictly from the mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon to the town of Alta, and it has not taken into consideration the cars that come into our foothill area to access both Big and Little Cottonwood Canyons. So I'm hoping that with any luck, this is going to slow down the process. They claim that they don't know where they're getting the funding, but actually before Senator Niederhauser left office, he passed legislation for a recreation fund that the legislature has been putting $20 million into annually. And actually, if you sit down and do the math on putting $20 million into a bank account and earning interest on it, in like 25 years, it turns into $360 million, which is the price tag for building a gondola. So I had hoped that they wouldn't find the funding, but now it would have to be a mechanism of really the legislature saying, we don't want this. And there are thousands of people that are working currently in our small ways to educate not only the public but the legislature on what a financially, well, I'm not going to take the whole, I could take the whole evening. One of the latest factoids that I haven't even gotten to speak with my two council colleagues on, but we've now done the math, and the goal that UDOT, the reason why UDOT says we must have the gondola is that they can put 1,000 people up into Snowbird and Alta every hour on these in these gondola cars that hold 35 people per car and would leave every 2 minutes. But the problem is that with the arriving cars into this 2,500 parking stall, the people that want to ride the gondola have anywhere from a 2 to 4 hour wait until they can get on a gondola. And can you imagine, anybody in the room a skier? Can you imagine at the end of your ski day standing in a queue to ride the gondola back down, and you have anywhere from a 2 to 4 hour wait after your ski day, and it's getting dark and you still haven't been able to board a gondola to get down to your car in a parking garage that you have to then get to. It has not been well thought out, and we need to be outraged over this. Anybody who isn't outraged is not paying attention. So if you want to get more in the know on this, there's a couple of websites you can go to. It's Friends of Little Cottonwood Canyon. So it's called, am I getting that right? lccfriends.org. And then there's also an organization, Save Not Pave, and they're also following this very closely. But the best website to get the best information is friendslcc.org. Or lccfriends.org. Anyways, you know what to do. Okay. Did you go ahead with your question?
Yes. So from what I heard you say, a primary purpose for building the gondola is to increase the amount of traffic that can go up the canyon. Is that a fair statement?
People up there.
Right.
Yeah, to the ski resort.
People, okay. And so who benefits from that?
3% of the population of Utah ski. And
Well-
so to answer your question, this is going to benefit mostly affluent persons who, many of whom are here from out of state.
Well, true, I think that's the case, but also the corporations. Now, I haven't heard that any of the ski areas are close to failure financially. So if they're not close to failure, then that means their doors are going to stay open whether they get more traffic or not.
Well, is the purpose of tax dollars to keep corporations afloat?
That's where I'm headed. So what this means is that if it's to increase more skiers on the hills up there so they can earn more revenue, who's going to pay for that? So in my opinion, if you lay that burden on the taxpayer to benefit those corporations so they can have more skiers on the hill, that's upside down. If they want to...
Well, the state of Utah spends a lot of money advertising to get people to fly in here and recreate here. A tremendous amount of money. And I know because I worked for the Salt Lake Convention and Visitors Bureau in my career. And, Ski Utah, your tax dollar is paying for a lot of salaries of people who work around the clock to try to get people to fly in here and recreate. And so we, the existing residents of Utah, need to look into this. I mean, are we getting what we want? Is the tax revenue coming off of the ski tickets in Alton Snowbird worth forever degrading Little Cottonwood Canyon and driving more traffic into the foothills? Because the cars are going to still be allowed to drive in that canyon. So we're not reducing the amount of traffic in our foothills or in the canyon. We're simply cramming thousands of additional people up into Snowbird and Alta on the roughly 30 peak days of the winter season. That is what, in essence, is the...
Well, and I think for those of us that have skied, one of the most annoying things is if you go to ski and the ski hill is packed with twice or three times as many people. And so, in my opinion, you're going to see, might benefit a little bit, but then it's going to go on a downward curve as you keep increasing the volume of people on those hills. So, to me, it's very short-sighted, both who should pay for that to give them more revenue, and then in the end, are more people going to be attracted to hills that are just jam-packed with people? I don't think so. So I think that'll start them on a downward curve.
You could go talk to Nathan Rafferty. He's the head of Ski Utah. Or Dave Fields, who is at every microphone at every event. Yes. Well, right now, UDOT has not specified whether it would run year-round. They were, for a while, very resolute that it would only run in the ski season. Yeah, so, all right. Well, yes, sir. Yes, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but this is something I urge you to all to pay attention to. Salt Lake County got a special federal grant to, in essence, make changes to the highway up Mill Creek Canyon and to facilitate more cars going up into Mill Creek Canyon. I really want to see us have a vision for transit that can drop people off at trailheads, let people leave their vehicles closer to where they live or lodge. And that needs to happen. We know when these canyons get a lot of traffic, right? So we know when this additional transit needs to be offered, and it's a matter of political will. Right now, we put 3/4 of our transportation tax dollars to UDOT to build out highways. There's controversies going on in the Heber Valley. You may have followed the I-15 widening of the interstate. So these are all things that all of us in this room can affect, and it's frankly through, in my opinion, political leadership. And so when people say that things are hopeless, they're not hopeless. We need to elect people into our legislature, into our county, and our city government who care deeply and are willing to come into the 21st century and really look for solutions that, again, allow lower vehicle miles traveled. It's not taking anybody, but if you want to drive, you're going to need to pay for it, and there's consequences. Many of the people in this room I know personally through personal conversations, and I know them because they're concerned about too many cars making their lives miserable, commercial vehicles in their residential neighborhoods, and it goes on and on. So we have to be very deliberate about the way that we design our roadways. I mean, these are all man-made problems. We can solve these things. We made the problems, we can solve them. It takes political will. Did I see a hand go up? No? Okay, let's also move on, to, well, somebody blurt out. Is there a certain subject you want to hear?
Somebody wants to stop traffic on Racket Club Drive.
Oh, you want to talk about the barricade?
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about the barricade. And then I also want to recognize that our House Representative Galen Benyon has entered the room, and we're going to give her some time on the microphone here shortly. So let me lay the scene here, because those of you that live either there in Canyon Center or in the Canyon Racket Club Drive area or in Apple Valley. So since the Canyon Center development has gone in, there have been ongoing concerns about the flow of traffic with the surrounding restaurants and the employees from Alpha Coffee on through. Where do they park? Also, the cut-through traffic that doesn't just cut through the Apple Valley streets, Prospector, the people that live up on Prospector on the east side of Wasatch Boulevard experience cut-through traffic. Kings Hill Drive residents experience cut-through traffic. Those on Alpine Way, those on the west side in certain spots of Wasatch Boulevard. So it's a pervasive challenge, and the way the barricade idea came about was to discourage the cut-through traffic of people coming east on Fort Union Boulevard, coming to it being backed up, you know, way before they get to the mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon, and they're looking for ways to circumvent that gridlock. So we all know that that's, so we had a study, Cottonwood Heights commissioned a study last year about, it occurred in, sadly it occurred in early April. Anyways, I don't know how much detail to get into with all this. I mean, I was disappointed that the study was based on like Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 4 in the afternoon. And I mean, you know, it didn't, to me, it didn't really get to the crux of the matter. But in defense of the city staff that put this together, they didn't want to wait until the following year when, again, the winter traffic period started at Christmas time. So I think they were trying to move ahead. So at any rate, we got the data, we got the suggestions from Horrocks and from our public safety, our public works director. And you've seen some of the implementations, the printing on the road of don't block the intersection. I'm so glad to hear that it's helped. I've been hearing that. There were a number of people that said, well, why not signs that say no through traffic, you know, locals only? But I'm told by our city manager that the state code really discourages any blockage or, you know, mandating that, you know, through, because, you know, let's face it, coming into Apple Valley is a through way to get over to Bengal Boulevard. I mean, you know, so oh, well, there's citizen action. For the sake of the record, someone said that they go on Waze and on Google Maps or whatever and start saying that there's a lot of accidents going on to try to slow down the drive-through traffic, cut-through traffic. But when I consulted with the top transportation director for Salt Lake City, he said to me, really, it's making traffic calming measures on those local streets that will discourage cut-through traffic, which also accomplishes the goal of slowing vehicles down. This can cost money, let's face it, bulb outs and all these ways of traffic calming, chicanes, things of that nature. That does cost money. I mean, this would take Cottonwood Heights really prioritizing this. The good news is that there are state monies. We do get some monies from Salt Lake County each year, just shy of $400,000 at the end of each year. Although our roughly $400,000 from the end of this year went to Visit Salt Lake to subsidize ski bus service. So I hate to tell you, that didn't make me very happy. I mean, I want to help the ski traffic problem, but it seems to me that because we pay tax, you know, we're all being taxed for the UTA transit system, and so we should get more of the benefits, in my opinion. And I don't want to oversimplify. The problem is the lack of bus operators, but I say to that, pay those bus operators more. Give them the kind of labor package that they need. I want you all to know, part of what I am spending my time doing, I was sworn into the UTA Local Advisory Council a year ago, and I meet with the executives from UTA. I've been frankly discouraged to hear that they can't seem to negotiate something better with the union. Carlton Christensen has asked me, what are you talking about, Ellen? We already pay them $20.50. And I said, well, pre-COVID, that might have sounded good to somebody. But, you know, in today's world, we need to not only pay them more, there's other things that, as I've...
Let's talk about that there.
So going back to the barrier, sorry.
UTA would never get a local.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for wrapping me right back where we need to go. So the barricade has been put on hold indefinitely. Now, there are people in the room here who really wanted the barricade, and I will say that the mayor and I both went to bat for the barricade because we did it in the most well-meaning way. We were really trying to meet the needs of residents who don't want to see the parking, the commercial trucks coming down south on Canyon Racket Drive and then trying to make a U-turn in the circle, in the Canyon Racket Circle and coming back out. I mean, we need to keep thoughtfully working on this, but...
We were also promised that the parking would be handled, and they put the signs on the Alpha Coffee side, which says maximum 2-hour parking, but they didn't put them on the other side, so now we're getting skiers parking all the way up Canyon Racket Drive, which I happen to live on the street next to that. So now we're getting a lot of parking there. They never fulfilled that promise of putting signs on both sides of the road saying, limiting the parking so that we, you know, when the snow flies, we don't get the snowplows coming down the street. Can we fix that? A few signs would do great. Yeah, then we get the street plowed.
Well, they got a big sign that says free public parking.
Oh yeah,
Nobody
that
parks
brings
there.
up another issue. We have spent how many millions of dollars of taxpayer money in order to subsidize a parking garage that is underutilized by 95%. I'd like to have everybody that told me that was going to work come up here and be pilloried, because it hasn't worked. Every time we seem to do something in this area, we are going to solve the problem. We don't solve anything. We just spend more money and do more studies. So maybe we ought to stop spending so much money and doing so many studies and let things marketplace work things. Everybody wants to change. Nobody's here as a real estate developer. We can't. Nobody's going to change where Dan's is or Green's used to be. Nobody's here. Why is the city even involved? We have no expertise in this. We don't have any profit and loss statements. Let's stop doing this. It just seems like when we spend money, we waste money.
Well, my out on this is I was not on the council when this whole project went through. And I know you're not attacking me, but you are addressing...
I don't even know who they were. I'm just saying, things get done, and then we pay the price later, whether it's going to include the gondola, whether it's going to be parking garages. We need to say our local government, maybe we ought to stay out of it. You might want to bring in Google Fiber. I'm sorry, folks. It's going to be just like your home, where you now no longer have to string wire to get your computer work. It's all going to be wireless. So you want to string Google Fiber? Great, but T-Mobile's got it for $30 a month now, and it's wireless. So we just need to stop thinking that we can change the future. The future's going to happen. And, I'm just saying, it just seems like to me, we need to slow down our whole idea that we can change the future. We don't know what it is. Yogi Berra was very, very concise in this matter. He says, the future ain't what it used to be.
I should have had you at the microphone to record all that, darn it. Okay, so the next person who has all that to say, please come so that for the benefit of those that aren't here tonight.
You can hear me.
Well, we're recording this for those that are absent.
I'm just
Okay.
waiting till there's a pause.
Well, at this point, on top of that parking garage that says free parking is supposed to have a building structure, as we know. And it's looking now that Chris McCandless is leaning toward having about half of it be condos and half of it be office space. But COVID came into play. various things. And then as far as the amphitheater area that was supposed to be built, that is tax increment dollars. And we haven't, COVID slowed that down, so we have not accrued the kind of dollars that it's going to take. But at our retreat tomorrow, we are going to be discussing getting our hands on, hopefully, several $100,000 to start changing that, building in phases, getting that greened up and not just have that unsightly.
I'm just using that as an example of how we just don't know what the future is going to be. We don't know about pandemics. We don't know anything about the future. It's all going to change. You start spending our taxpayer money to do things, it just goes into it doesn't change the future. It's not going to make a big difference.
All right, Jeff?
Great comments. I think I can lean over. So some of that money was spent on the new traffic study. The original one was, what he held, 15 years old. Pretty old traffic study. I think we'd all agree we've changed since that original traffic study. So that they did spend money. I think we need to know the traffic count. Wasatch Boulevard, Fort Union, and nobody's counted the cars for a long time. That was very important. One thing they did recommend on Racket Club Drive, based on the future of Canyon Center, everybody knows 140 apartments coming. Okay, do you know where they're going to exit and enter? Right next to Racket Club Drive. Have anybody gone to Alpha Coffee lately? In the morning? Did you find a parking spot? Did you find the free parking spots? Nobody uses those. They go up the street, they filter into the neighborhoods. It's ridiculous. Okay? Well, they're going off of where all the other cars go. There's no signage. So McCandless's free parking sign's down, fell down. He took it down, whatever. So you pull into the beautiful 8 Settlers. They have signs that say you can't park there. So people turn around. They don't know there's parking underneath. So we got beautiful Marriott, 8 Settlers, another bar coming, Sayola, David Weekley's condos. Okay, all these were put in on the old traffic study. So this was a warranted study. And what the study also suggested is blocking Racket Club Drive because of the traffic is coming. Okay, these aren't hopeful buildings. They're coming. They're approved. The density is terrible. Wait till you see what happens with 1,000 new car trips a day. Entering and exiting right at Alpha Coffee and Porcupine. Okay, in my opinion, those employers don't push where to park. Those restaurants, it's a free-for-all. Okay, I've lived in a neighborhood where they had a restaurant and they closed it within 6 months because they went into Browning Avenue and Harrison Avenue. It was over to Foothill Village. And I'm, as you know, I'm frustrated. We need to look at what Canyon Center is going to bring us and start basing our signs. You know, that road is a wreck. Try riding your bike up that street. You'll get hit by a car. And that's a residential road. So what are we going to do?
Well, thank you. And Jeff Chatelain has been very, very communicative now for a long time, and I want to really acknowledge what he's done to help the City Council to better understand the dilemmas going on there. So I, again, do not have all the answers. I believe that we have to not only look short-term, but look longer-term and get better transit alternatives, because we live in a very desirable place. A lot of people want to come to the mouth, up into Big and Low Cottonwood Canyons. I mean, I discovered this 40 years ago, and I moved here from Southern California. Okay, and it's not going to go away. And so oh, that's the right answer. Oh, yeah. And so I love this place, and I'm determined to keep our quality of life as just as high as we can keep it. So I would like to bring our Representative Galen Benyon to the microphone, and just as soon as Andy Agarty's done, I'd like to hear from her. Thank you, Andy.
I just have one comment on this whole Mouth of Big Cottonwood thing, because we all know what's going on. It's all revolves around powder skiing. If there's no powder, there's no problem. Last year, when it didn't snow for 8 weeks, there was no traffic. So to come up with these solutions like barricades and whatnot, we have our taxpayer dollars in this town give us this police force. I think most of my money goes to that police force. And maybe they could be at the mouth of Big Cottonwood, preventing people that don't line up to take a right and try to take a right and almost cause accidents. There should be a Cottonwood Heights cop right there, right at Alpha Coffee. Every morning there's a powder day, Saturday, Sunday, holiday. They could do a lot to alleviate, because me, when it's crowded, I'm a skier. I don't ski in Big Cottonwood. I go ski. I'm not going to tell you where I ski, but it ain't there. And like leaving yesterday morning or Saturday morning, the mouth of Big Cottonwood, I just want to get out of here, and I can't get out of here. And I'm not patronizing Brighton or Solitude. I don't have an Icon pass. I don't use a pass. But I want, as a citizen, I should be able to drive to the freeway and have a Cottonwood Heights cop down there making sure I can get through the intersection. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Andy. Yes.
I have a prepared statement. I'm Gary Panko. Address is 7342 Racket Club Drive. Is this loud enough? I have concerns about blocking Racket Club Drive. By putting a barrier on Racket Club, it will block the fire hydrant that protects my home. I've downloaded the Title VIII fire prevention, although this is Sandy Cities, I'm sure Unified's is the same. International Fire Code. It reads, no dwelling or unit in any development shall be located more than 200 feet from a fire hydrant. My home is over 200 feet away. Guardrails or protective barricades shall be installed when necessary to protect the fire hydrants from physical damage, but must not be adversely affect or encumbered their operation. The barricade will do that. Chapter 4, 8-4-1, fire lanes. It shall be the duty of the fire chief to designate personally fire lanes where their judgment, geological traffic, population density, and other relevant factors make such a designation to protect property. Blocking Racket Club would close the fire lane. With a new high-rise or a new apartment building going in, you won't be able to get a hook and ladder in there. My safety is important. Has the Unified Fire Chief signed off on this idea? Anyone from the fire department with us today? It will also lengthen the response times of the fire department, increase the times of ambulance service, and slow police response times. My safety is important. I've lived on the corner of Winesap and Racket Club for 20 years. Cottonwood Heights Police have the presence in our neighborhood. One night they caught a person with a Slim Jim breaking into a car. Another time they apprehended a porch pirate right on my corner. I want to thank Cottonwood Heights Police. Much of the so-called cut-through traffic is skiers from the neighborhood and carpool people that park on the side streets because Fort Union parking is inadequate. The carpoolers are just trying to do their part in relieving congestion in the canyon. The Horrocks traffic study has some good safety ideas like increasing sidewalk visibility and no left turn signs. Blocking Racket Club is not one of them. Is it a coincidence that this is the same corner that I witnessed two ladies on their hands and knees painting the curb red? My neighbors in the Apple Valley neighborhood take pride in their homes with maintenance and landscaping. increasing property value and increasing the tax base. Is there a plan for an artistic design of this barrier, or is it just a concrete block? In closing, I feel the safety of fire, ambulance, and police service outweigh the inconvenience and nuisance of snow traffic on a public street.
Thank you, Mr. Panko. Thank you. Appreciate that.
I'm up? Okay, so I'm Sylvia Benyon. I live on Racket Club Circle. And in response to Bard, we can't see the future. However, we can't see the future. However, we can imagine what a huge HUD building that will be built on that empty lot is going to produce the traffic every day, hundreds of cars going in and out, and where are they going to go? Yeah, they're going to go right on Racket Club Drive or the new street. And we need to be proactive and use our brains and think, well, what should we be doing now to avoid a complete shutdown of Racket Club Drive as it tries to empty onto Fort Union. So that's my suggestion.
Hello, everyone. So first I want to thank Ellen for putting together this town hall meeting. Thank you very, very much. So appreciate everyone coming tonight. I also live at 7342 South Racket Club Drive, right the corner of Winesap and Racket Club. And I have also been there for 20 years. All right, so to me, my safety, as my husband said, is of most concern. So right now, I prepared a statement. Right now, if they block my Racket Club Drive, so my safety will be in jeopardy. It will decrease my safety because it will force me to go out another way out of the subdivision, make my right onto Fort Union, go through that very busy Wasatch Boulevard to my closest grocery store, to my favorite restaurant, to the place where I get my gas, and my favorite hardware store, and I will also have to come back through Wasatch Boulevard, make a right onto Fort Union, and come back through probably McIntosh and make my way back to my home. So to me, my safety is important. I understand about people's concern about the apartment complex. So, but we still need more than one access point or two, from where we live. So I also want to thank Cottonwood Heights for the safety things they have already implemented. I love the do not block intersections on the road, and I do think the Hawk pedestrian signal may help people park across from Alpha Coffee. But if you do want to encourage walking, all those people that park in front of my house in the summer, they walk to Alpha Coffee. So, and it does give us a sense of community. But and if you're worried about speeding cars in the neighborhood, making my route home will not achieve the goal of slower traffic. So that's so please consider the safety of the residents in our neighborhood. I know I have a different opinion from many people in here, but the slogan for Cottonwood Heights is the city between the canyons. And that's why we choose to live here. And I'm so proud to be a Cottonwood Heights resident. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I need to represent Danish Road. although I really want to hear from Galen, because I love her. She's great. But yes, we can't get out of our neighborhood either, and on ski days, there's not enough room for people to walk and for cars to go by. So a couple of weeks ago, all of us were stuck in our neighborhood unless we wanted to go a different way down Creek Road or whatever, but you often don't know that until you're already stuck. But we've been asking for a sidewalk for a long time, and we have all these powder-hungry skiers that drive a little bit crazy. And so anyway, I am very concerned for you with Rocket Club Lane, but Danish Road, we need more representation. Thank you.
Thank you, and I am getting a lot of residents in that area, complaining justifiably about those problems, both the lack of continuous sidewalk on that west side of Danish Road, as well as cars moving too fast. So I'm very much in favor, and I will be a voice for that in our retreat, that we need to redesign that road, not wider, but with slowing mechanisms to slow the traffic and to give the continuous sidewalk. So thank you for your comment.
Hi, my name is Robert Edmonds. I'm Jeff and Sylvia's neighbor on Racket Club Circle. Just want to offer a different perspective on Racket Club Drive closure. I know Jeff mentioned we need traffic studies. I commissioned my own traffic study in my car with my Android stopwatch and odometer. And what I did was mapped our current commute and our future commute should Racket Club Drive close. And what I calculated was it would about double the distance it takes to get out of our neighborhood, add between a third and a half a mile of travel distance, and 1 minute per one-way drive, which, I've heard 1 minute, come on, you can handle 1 minute. I computed about, on average, every day, how many round trips we do. It's about 5, so that's 10 trips. So it's 10 minutes a day of extra commuting, over an hour a week. I mean, I don't know about you guys, I don't want to spend another hour a week unnecessarily in my car driving around the neighborhood. Not to mention the additional distance. Currently, we pass 10 houses when we leave our home to go to Wasatch through Fort Union. If Racket Club Drive closes, that increases to 40 homes. So our car, instead of passing 10 homes, would pass an additional 30 homes. Those 30 homes would experience our car as traffic, local traffic in the neighborhood. 30 times 10 one-way trips a day, 300 drive-bys with the houses. So I also want everybody to think, this is not a powder day we're talking about. The powder days are maybe what? A couple days a week during the winter. What we're talking about here is every single day, 365 days a week, not just a couple hours in the morning. We're talking about 24 hours a day. So I wouldn't be surprised if the net change in local traffic would increase should they close the road, because we're talking now about locals who have to make a much longer trip to exit the neighborhood all the time, permanently, not just on powder days. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edmond. That was very well laid out. Appreciate the specifics. And as you know, I'm all for lowering vehicle miles traveled. So, it is a dilemma. I really recognize that Sylvia Benyon and those who are trying to come up with ways to make things better. And so, again, from everything I know at this point, the barricade is on hold indefinitely. And so I just want to put your mind at rest that you're not going to suddenly see a barricade. Okay, I don't know if Representative Benyon is still in the room. Did you have anything? She's worked on so many great projects for her constituents, and let's give her a round of applause.
I am just so impressed that you are all here. I've held town halls, partly it's because of COVID. I've had virtual town halls, and I've never had this many people. And we have had in-person town halls and not had this many people. So I just think it's wonderful that you're all here. I have a town hall this Thursday virtual, and you can go to my website, www.galenbenyon.com, and find the link. And then on the 16th, Senator Kathleen Reeby and I will be at Butler Junior High in the Media Center. So this is phenomenal that you're all here. And I'm glad to talk about any things that you want to talk about. The gentleman that was saying we can't see the future, one thing I think we all can see is the future of Great Salt Lake if we don't intervene. And today we had a press conference with the Speaker of the House and the Senate President and lots of us as legislators. And the Senate President said that 70% of saving our water situation is conservation and 30% is development. And I'm sorry, there's no development in the future for Great Salt Lake. When he says development, he means another reservoir, which would be, or the pipeline, the Bear Lake pipeline or the Lake Powell pipeline, and these do not solve our problems. So I encourage you to send an email to Senate President Adams and tell him that you do not want water development. We need more groundwater storage. We need a lot of other things. And there will be a lot of good bills on Great Salt Lake this year, but no development would help our water situation. We can't create more water. We have to deal with the reality that we have. Another thing I'd like to talk about is the Senate Bill House Bill 215 that was passed about education and the vouchers. And so this is sad that we have a supermajority, and this can happen with either party. I think when either party becomes a supermajority, in the House right now, we are only 14 out of 75. Only 14 Democrats out of 75. When we had the vote for the voucher bill in the House, they brought it quickly and swiftly because they knew they had the majority to pass it. So there were 20 votes against. We did have some Republicans join us. And that is a bill that we strongly oppose because it hurts education. It takes $48 million permanently out of our public education system. And the majority of emails I get, even from people who have put their children through private schools, is they do not want this bill. They sacrificed to put their children in private schools because of their religious or other convictions, but they know that public funds are for public schools. There are families, the people that they say this will benefit, they don't have the money or the time to drive their children to a private school. So those are some of my concerns at the legislature. We have some really innovative ideas. Representative Joel Briscoe, he has a great idea that I hope we can make happen. Currently we have a WIRA account, and it's a water infrastructure account, and it is a percentage of our sales tax that is going towards this development of these pipelines. And his idea is, great, you've had this money going for those pipelines. Now let's divert that money to the Great Salt Lake as a permanent fund to pay for water, to release water, or to protect wetlands, or whatever it is we need to do for the Great Salt Lake. And that will have the Senate President and others not liking it, but it is a genius idea because it's already set aside money and they've gotten millions that they can keep there where it's sitting in case that ever happens, but take the money now to save the Great Salt Lake. It is. I can't remember the number. You could look it up under Joel Briscoe. I can look it up when I'm not speaking. But it just got out last week. He had a press conference on Friday about it. So there are, and there's others. two things that I am working on for water. One of them is related right to what we've done here in Cottonwood, in the Canyons School District. Canyons has hired a tremendous energy engineer, Chris Epler. He just retired, and he cut Canyons' energy consumption by 43%. And then he came there at the end of his career, and he is certified in all the ways that you can be with irrigation as someone who does audits and someone who designs and implements irrigation. And so at Canyons, he started a school and a student water manager internship, and he pulls AP Math students and gives them an internship that is paid, but it's not high pay, but they're paid and they're getting a great experience. They get 3 days of training on a Cal Poly program about irrigation and landscaping, and then they're on the fields. And they, since 2016, have cut their water use by 20 million gallons that they've kept on throughout that. What a great thing. So he inspired me. And I've met with the state school board, and we've met with Davis District. The man there in charge of their energy, he wants all their buildings to be smart so that when they have a water leak, they know. And even just before this last winter break, they had a cooling tower or a boiler that they had not winterized, and so it developed a leak right as the break started. And if they hadn't had it monitored, even as they caught it, they had lost 10,000 gallons. But if it had gone, it would have been hundreds of thousands of gallons of water lost and the destruction of a building, right? So that is so smart. And then we have the Salt Lake City School District, and they have Greg Lebecki is their sustainability engineer, and they have very targeted goals of, like, I think 2030 they're carbon neutral or something. I mean, it's really aggressive, their goals. And they hired an energy audit company to come and look at their buildings, and based off of the savings that they were going to be able to make, they went to the bank and got a $23 million loan. And they're making those changes and paying the bank back as they make the changes. So all of them inspired me to run a bill, and it's House Bill 217. I'm thinking I have it right, 217. And it is to create a pilot project to help more school districts do the same thing throughout the state, because rural districts, they don't have the kind of money that Canyons has to hire somebody like Chris. And this will have a review board, and it's really exciting. I just met, it's fascinating to have my job, because Friday I had the local president of Dominion Energy come to my office, and he and his energy engineer, and they talked about the matching. They will go in and do free audits for the schools, so this board can coordinate these efforts more. And Rocky Mountain Power will do the same thing. They'll go in and do free audits and give them incentives when they will work on making their buildings more efficient. So I'm really hopeful. We also have a block grant that the Governor's Office of Energy Development will apply for federal funds for $1.8 million, and half will go towards this project that we're starting. And I've asked for $10 million, and the man it's scalable, so whatever they give us we'll take, right? But the man in Salt Lake City, he said that this review board, he said, I think that has the leverage to increase it by 10-fold, any money you can bring. That is huge. That is huge. And, when I presented this to the Water Task Force, I presented it 3 times because I was so excited. And I wanted to get them to understand it. And they said that what they love about it is that it brings more of our young people into possibly following a field as a hydrologist or as a water technician. And these are people that we don't have enough of them. And so it helps kids find a pathway to a career that is really needed and fascinating. So I'll just stop talking and see if any of you have questions while I'm here, and then I'll hand it back to Ellen. And I applaud her for holding this, and I applaud each of you for coming on a cold night to be together as we can be again. So do you have any questions for me? Jade is up there.
Yeah. First, I'd like to thank you for being here. We are so lucky to have a representative that makes time for the community. So many cities don't have that, so thank you for being here. As a person who comes from a family with English as a second language, the work that you're doing in driver's license test exam availability in multiple languages is very important to me. So thank you for the small ways that you're trying to make Utah a better place for everybody. Can you share a little bit with the group about what you're doing for that?
Yeah. Okay. So, and you should probably all know, I knew Sylvia Benyon in the group that led me to be elected. I did not plan to be an elected official. My husband served 26 years in the Air Force, and when we moved back here less than 11 years ago, I joined Women's State Legislative Council of Utah. It is 102 years old, and it is bipartisan, and they listen to both sides of important bills, and Sylvia joined that group, and I met her husband there too. And I served in leadership there, so people told me I should do this when Marie Polson retired, and I'm fascinated and happy to be doing this work. But another thing I did when we got here is for 5 years I taught as a volunteer English to immigrants and refugees through English Skills Learning Center. And that was a fascinating experience. And we have such a wonderful country. And only 1% of refugees leave their refugee camps and are resettled to another country. And of immigrants, they are just so glad to be in our country where we have the rule of law and where we have codes that keep our country livable. So I wanted to make sure that we had translation of the driver license exam. When I ran this bill initially last year, there were only 2 or 3 other states that did not provide translation of the driver license exam for legal immigrants. We have a driver privilege card for illegal immigrants because we want people to have insurance, right? If they hit me, I want them to be insured, and we want them to have a driver's license and be driving legally, but we can't give them a license, but we can give them a driver privilege card. And that was done by Senator Bramble, like in 2005 or something, quite a while ago. So last year when I ran this bill, it went through the House unanimously, but a senator with a lot of power didn't want it, so he ran a different bill. And it did do some good things. It gave 5 languages for the full driver card, the driver license, like you and I have, which means really you have to be a citizen. So it really was not for immigrants. So I ran the bill again this year, and I've been talking to that senator, I send him text every month, the last few months, saying, hello, can we talk? And we've met in his office, and now he's the co-sponsor of my bill. So it went through the House this time unanimously, and it will pass fine now that it's got that senator. And so it's just like in your daily lives, right? It comes down to patience that we need to get the things done that we need to have done, and it comes with working together. I'm grateful that when I brought it up on the House floor, the chair of the Transportation Committee, who is Republican, stood up in support of the bill, and no one else stood up. It just passed. So, I'll take any other question.
So we talked earlier about funding for the gondola, and is that going to be on the docket? Are they going to request a specific funding of that, or is it going to get squeezed in somehow like we suspect?
So I have met with UDOT. Actually, it was people that have spent their careers servicing the tram. They wanted to meet with UDOT and give their feedback about why they do not think the gondola is the best solution. And it was a lot about what Ellen talked about, the operation, that they couldn't see how they can smoothly get so many people up and down as they would like to. And it was also about not on the tram, there's an operator on the tram, somebody physically there from Snowbird to represent them. If there's a problem on these gondolas, there won't be anyone there. If someone gets off the plane and gets on a gondola and throws up or faints or brings a gun, there's no one in there to, yeah. 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 So the funding, as Ellen said, has been earmarked about $20 million a year going into a fund, and they could, it's probably at least 100 or close to 100 million now. So they could bond against that. And I was also at an event recently where it was mentioned by David Fields that this would be a private-public partnership. So maybe they'll put up something and then the state put up something. But I am firmly opposed to the gondola. I love this canyon that is so wild, right? That's why we love it. And if we try to tame it, what have we done with such a waste of money that we need for so many other things? When I think of those towers, yeah, with the lights at the top all year long, and what that does for wildlife, and this world that we think we can just do what we want to and it doesn't make a difference, but it does. And the construction of the bases and the roads that they would need to maintain them, and it's not a, they say it's such a green and clean thing, but they are I think either any alternative will have avalanche berms that will be like a tunnel that you will drive under, that will make it less time that they need to clean the roads, but they would still need to close the canyon. Even with that, even with the gondola, they would need to clean the canyons for avalanches. And it's the most almost wild canyon we have in the country. It's the most avalanche prone, and that's why it's so special. And we're fourth generation in this valley, I think sixth in the state. And one of my uncles, this is a funny story, so my family is of the predominant religion growing up, and one of my uncles was a kind of a naughty boy, and he drove up on a Sunday to go skiing, and there was an avalanche in front of his car and after his car. But the funny part is that when the press got there, he also had a cigarette in his pocket. So he was completely fried. But so the avalanches and things, I mean, it's a wild canyon, and just leave it.
Okay, I'm sorry, can I follow up though?
Yeah.
So do you think that there's support to pass it? Because the only way, we can be for or against it, but the only way that it's going to stop is if it doesn't get funded. So what's the prognosis?
I have been, when we met with UDOT, I was promised that the record of decision is not coming out this legislative session. And I think that's true. So the record of decision will come out after March 5th or whatever. And then we'll decide, right, in the future session if we're going to fund it. And I just need to partner with my rural friends, because how does this benefit rural Utah? How does this benefit, northern Utah that doesn't drive all the way down here, even if it's not rural? So I'm hopeful that we can have reason prevail, but when we see something like that voucher bill just rammed through, if we can't collect enough opposition, it's really hard. So it does come down to us, me and Senator Reby, all of us working together, contacting also Representative Spendlove, who still represents part of Cottonwood Heights, and Representative Elison, who represents part of Cottonwood Heights, and let them know that you oppose the gondola. Let Representative Stenquist down in Draper, he is in favor of the gondola. Hit him with a lot of emails and let him know. We have formed a new caucus. A caucus is a group of us, right? And we have a new caucus, and it's the outdoor recreation, it's Tourism and Outdoor Recreation Caucus. And Representative Stenquist is one of the leaders. And we kicked it off up at Snowbird, not this Saturday, but the last one, and they did talk about the gondola. So let him know, let Representative Stenquist know that you do not want the gondola part of that caucus's push. I'll let him know too, but it would be good for him to hear from you. It's not, you're not going to find it on the web, on a website, but it is the Tourism and Outdoor Recreation Caucus, and we'll meet 4 times during this session. And we'll work on good things, like they're working on RV trails and bike trails. UDOT is going to build paved trails throughout the state to help people be able to ride their bikes safely, different places. One of them will be up in a Park City area that they talked about in our committee today. So.
Let's thank Representative Benyon so much. I would like to just tag on to a very important point that we all need to remember. While I'm not opposed to these separated multi-use paths, I do a lot of e-biking, and I think it can be delightful. But we have something already that we pay a lot of money for in this state. They're called streets and roads. We already have the places for people to ride their bicycle. We just simply need to modify our streets and roads so that they are safe for all users. We don't need to come up with all these new funds to build, again, these paths like, when they talk about the Bonneville Shoreline Trail, that's a wonderful recreational trail. It is not active transportation. We need to have active transportation for those who want to use it. That's safe mobility for all users. We already have the asphalt laid. So okay, please go ahead.
I hate microphones, so thanks for letting us speak to you both today. I wanted to just bring up the idea of water conservation really quick. Last summer, I was tired of a high water bill. I took it upon myself to rent a sod cutter, cut out my grass, redo it, create a water-wise situation. I tried to do the flip your strip thing, but I did it after the fact, and they said even with a bunch of rocks, I didn't do it right, and that doesn't make sense to me. So I would like to see other neighbors do that, because I went from probably 50,000 gallons of water a month down to 15. And if you think if everybody did that, because we're the third dry state in the entire nation, that's the water right there. I don't know if it would go in the Great Salt Lake, but I sure would like to hope to think it does. And the other thing I just wanted to bring up is I received from Ellen a idea of short-term rental policy change at the state level. I'm actively working with the council and the mayor to create an amendment to the ordinance that changes it to where if you live in the home, that maybe it's allowed that if you have parking off street, ways to prevent issues that come up when an absent owner just buys a home and makes it a short-term rental. I did it. I wasn't supposed to. It's canceled. But I like to be able to do it again because I had 300 stays, never any issues with any of my neighbors because I lived there and I'm not going to put up with anything. So if there's any update on that proposal at a statewide level, I'd appreciate just a brief moment of your time on that.
So about conservation, it is so important. And I met with the past director of the Jordan Water Conservancy District. He just retired. And he said that they were just overwhelmed too with the number of people giving their applications for the Flip the Strip because so many people wanted to do it. And I, as a candidate, I walk most of your streets. And I have seen so many people do exactly what you did, reduce the amount of turf in their grass just by not watering it sometimes and letting it go. I've spoken with a woman who, with her backyard pool, said, I did not fill it this year. I can't do that with the Great Salt Lake the way it is. So we have seen, I think Salt Lake, it's at least 20% less water this year than last. I mean, it's significant that we keep cutting our use. And a big part of it is agriculture is still like 70% of the water use. So there was 70 million for agriculture water optimization last year's bill, and there will be more this year's bill. And they can do things like find better ways of sprinkling the water, irrigating. They can line the canals, and they can look at different crops. They can do all of those things. One of the bills that was presented to us today is hydroponics, and this is up in Morgan, and the bill was going to add hydroponic fodder as another thing that can get loans through the agriculture funding mechanisms. So, and they use 90% less water, and they're using them up in Morgan because then they can keep their animals and not have to ship them like other farmers I know that are shipping them out of state because they can't afford to pay their food, so their feed. So there will be bills this year to increase. Representative Owens has a bill to increase the payback for Flip Your Strip from $1.50 to $2 or $2.50 more. And he'll also have a bill that for any new construction in the Great Salt Lake Basin that will limit to turf to 30% or less. So there are good bills for conservation, and all of our efforts matter. And he and I are really on the front lines of trying to find answers for the Great Salt Lake from our caucus. And so that is a good question. Is that water we save going to get to the Great Salt Lake? And he probably will have, he's been trying to find a way to make that happen. He represents Holiday. And that's tricky, because if we conserve our water, it stays in the reservoir. And in a way, that is saying no to the Bear River pipeline. If we can keep our reservoirs full, then we're saying no, thank you. We don't need that pipeline. So in a way, when we conserve water and it stays in our reservoir, we are helping Great Salt Lake that way. But we want to find a way. It was announced at the press conference today. They are starting another nonprofit that people can donate funds to save the Great Salt Lake directly. So there's a lot of innovation and ways that we can make this happen. And about short-term rentals, I've been very impressed that whenever I go to a community event, there was one held at the old Reams Plaza last year, and that was not the topic of the meeting. It was about the development of that plaza, but short-term rentals came up right away. And I've also had people from near Wasatch Boulevard meet with me, a year and a half ago, very concerned about homes in their neighborhoods becoming short-term rentals. One on their street, again, in a neighborhood that they added 2 kitchens to. So now they're trying to run 3 different rentals out of one house in your residential neighborhood. And then a home like that, the street up from them. So because I know this matters to us, I was able to join a short-term rental working group that was meeting during the interim. We have our legislative session that we have right now that's 45 days. Only 36 of them are working, and we're going to pass 500 bills, just so you know. It's like crazy. But during the year, we have interim sessions, and those are usually one or 2 days a month, starting in May, and then we take July off, and then we stop in December. We don't have a December. And we hear topics during the interim. And this working group met like 6 or 7 times during the interim about short-term rentals. And because I had a bill last year, because at one of my town halls, one of our city planners came, Jonathan Ebler. He came to one of my town halls with Senator Eby, and after that, after we talked about short-term rentals, I had a bill open on short-term rentals, and I didn't know what it should be. And the session had started, and he approached me with a great idea. He said, cities need a mandatory minimum, where the judge cannot push the fine down so low that it just doesn't matter. So I made that my bill, and it didn't get heard in a committee last session because it was written kind of late. But because it was public, I had a national expert reach out to me and Representative Moss, who also had a bill on this topic, and her name is Julie Davies, and she's been part of our working group. She has owned short-term rentals for a couple decades. She's worked in the hotel industry, so she understands that this should be fair with the hotel industry, right? It should be the same, you shouldn't have extra perks one way or the other. It should be fair playing field for a place where you're going to stay. And she also teaches and has written course books on how to do short-term rentals correctly. So she's perfect to have involved because she understands this field and she doesn't want to kill it, right? Because people want to have one in their home or you want to use one when you go somewhere, but we don't want it overtaking our communities, which down in Springdale, by Zion's, there's almost nowhere that you can live. It's almost all short-term rental. And that is the way it can go if we don't make the future what we want it to be. And so Representative Musselman has been the leader of this working group, and he has a short-term rental bill, and it's numbered, and it's 309. I'm thinking that, no, I'm forgetting the number. His other bill is 307, and I'm not remembering his other bill. But it's out there. You can look under, you can go to le.utah.gov, and you can look at the bills, and if you look under Representative Musselman, you'll find his bill. It's over 300 because it's just numbered. Or anyway, it might be 291. But his bill does not cut it. We need a state policy, and our cities have been waiting for a state policy because we passed a bill a couple years ago that said cities could not use the advertisement on the social media platform as part of their litigation. And that stifled cities. They're like, now Salt Lake is in litigation on a couple different cases because they tried to take them to court, and this bill that we passed makes it just a mess. So the bill that I have, I've worked with Julie Davies, and I've sent it to Ellen. It's like 2.5 pages, just the ideas. So the bill drafter's working on it. It's probably coming out this week, early next week at the latest. And it's going to be a statewide short-term rental policy. And I will have a tough political fight with that because, money talks in our legislature and development and things like that. But I will do everything I can to get people on board, do what I can. It will have things like a definition of what is and is not a short-term rental. In my mind, an apartment should never be a short-term rental. You should have apartments for people that live in them, and you should go to a hotel if you need that kind of lodging. No low-income housing should be a short-term rental. That's not in our state code. That should be in our state code. It should be illegal to short-term rent something that's low-income housing. Things that if you have a short-term rental and you're not there managing it, that you have someone that designated is your manager, that they maybe have to go get a license too, and that they're limited to 20, or some other number we can settle on that's not 500. They've had times in Florida where someone was in charge of 500, and then they had calls at all of them, and nobody can do anything. So, just to me, there'll be common sense because I'll have to work with a body of 75 to pass the House, and I'll work with the League of Cities and Towns, and so that's that one on short-term rentals.
Taking notes. I always love to have conversations with our representative because she gets to the meat of the matter, and it really is making a difference. So thank you so much for what you do. And she's so available. She will return your phone calls and your emails. She's amazing. Well, it is the stroke of 8 p.m. right now, and so I'm going to suggest that we close our meeting today. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here tonight. I've really listened. You've also had the ear of Councilman Bracken, and I know Sean Newell was here earlier too. So as a city council, I know I speak for all 5 of us. We are very interested. We want to see the city grow and develop in the ways that you want to see it and really protect residents and keep residents first. Thank you.